I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com. Literally, billions of dollars of failures.
It's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product.
Do something you're very passionate about. And don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day.
He's best known as the founder, chairman, and CEO of Amazon.com. He's also the founder of Blue Origin, a human spaceflight company. He's currently listed as the third wealthiest person in the world with a net worth of $72.8 billion. He's Jeff Bezos, and here's my take on his top 10 rules of success, Volume 2. Also, guys, as you're watching, if you hear something that really resonates with you, please leave it down in the comments below and put quotes around it so other people can be inspired. Also, when you write it down, it's much more likely to lock in for yourself as well. Enjoy.
Mon travail est la vie de mes emplois en tant que leader d'Amazon. Et d'encourager les gens à être
My job, one of my jobs as the leader of Amazon, is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But you really, it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com. Literally, billions of dollars of failures. And, you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or, give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they also, they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, making bets all along, even big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do.
We know from our past experiences that big things start small. The biggest oak starts from an acorn, and you've got to recognize, if you want to do anything new, you've got to be willing to let that acorn grow into a little sapling and then finally into a small tree, and maybe one day it'll be a big business on its own.
And in fact, that's one of the mottos for one of your initiatives, and forgive my pronunciation of the Latin, but Gradatim ferociter. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means step by step ferociously, and it's the motto for Blue Origin. Basically, you can't skip steps. You have to put one foot in front of the other. Things take time. There are no shortcuts. And but you want to do those steps with, passion and ferocity.
I think probably our most important piece of intellectual property is our brand name. And I think people, and I think this is very important for anybody who's going to start a company or market an invention to understand, is that brands for companies are like reputations for people. And reputations are hard-earned and easily lost. So the most important intellectual property that a company can have is, for us, it's Amazon. It's that name, but what it stands for. And we've worked very hard to earn trust. You can't ask for trust. You just have to do it the hard way, one step at a time. You make a promise and then fulfill the promise. You say, we'll deliver this to you tomorrow, and then you actually deliver it tomorrow. And if you do that over and over again, then ultimately you can instill your company's name with a reputation. And that's, I think, sometimes people talk about brands in this very amorphous way, but for me, I like to think of it as a person, and what is the reputation that person has, and how have they earned that reputation?
I think stress, you can be, I think one of the things that's very important to note about stress is that stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified perhaps in my conscious mind that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it. I find as soon as I identify it and make the first phone call or send off the first email message or whatever it is that we're going to do to start to address that situation, even if it's not solved, the mere fact that we're addressing it dramatically reduces any stress that might come from it. So stress comes from ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring. I think in large part. So stress doesn't come. People get stress wrong all the time, in my opinion. Stress doesn't come from hard work, for example. You can be working incredibly hard and loving it. And likewise, you can be out of work and incredibly stressed over that. So, and likewise, if you kind of use that as an analogy for what I was just talking about, if you're out of work, but you're going through, a disciplined approach of, a series of job interviews and so on, and working to remedy that situation, you're going to be a lot less stressed than if you're just worrying about it and doing nothing.
If you're giving great customer experience, the only way to do that is with happy people. You can't do it with a set of miserable people, watching the clock all day.
So does that include work-life balance and all those things?
Yes, but I teach 3 leadership classes a year at Amazon. I'm a part of it. They're bigger classes, but I come in and teach a session. And I always talk about work-life balance, except I like to use the phrase work-life harmony rather than balance, because to me, balance implies a strict trade, whereas I find that when I am happy at work, I come home more energized, I'm a better husband, a better dad, and when I'm happy at home, I come in and better boss and better colleague. And so it's not, you could be out of work and have terrible work-life balance. Even though you've got all the time in the world, you could just feel like, oh my God, I'm miserable, and you would be draining energy. And so you have to find that harmony. It's a much better word. And I think for most people, it's about meaning. People want to know that they're doing something interesting and useful. And for us, because of the challenges that we have chosen for ourselves, we get to work in the future. And it's super fun to work in the future for the right kind of person.
It's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
I had some family role models, and I had some other people, some sort of historical role models that I really looked at too. So certainly my grandfather was a serious role model for me. I just spent so much time. I think you learn different things from grandparents than you learn from parents. It's a great. I would encourage anybody to try to spend time not only with their parents but with their grandparents. But I also had two people I always would read about and were Thomas Edison and Walt Disney. Those were sort of my two biographical heroes. I've always been interested in inventors and invention, and Edison, of course, just for a little kid is and probably for adults too. I still feel this way at least. Is not only the symbol of that, but the actual fact of that. He's just an incredible inventor. And I've always felt that there's a certain kind of important pioneering that goes on from an inventor like Thomas Edison. And then Disney was a different sort of thing. He also, a real pioneer and an inventor and doing new things. But it seemed to me that he had this incredible capability to create a vision that he could get a large number of people to share. Because the things that Disney invented, like Disneyland, the theme parks and so on, they were such big visions that no single individual, unlike a lot of the things that Edison worked on, no single individual could ever pull them off. And Walt Disney really was able to get a big team of people working in a concerted direction. I don't really remember the exact day or anything, but when I was in college is when I started thinking about wanting to be an entrepreneur someday. So I was not the kid with the lemonade stand. I wasn't one of these kids who was always trying to raise money. I always wanted to be a scientist when I was little. But I'd also always loved computers. I was lucky because at my age this is unusual to have access to a mainframe computer from my elementary school when I was in 4th grade, and quickly learned that there was a pre-programmed Star Trek game on that computer, and then I never did anything except play Star Trek with the computer. So I don't know how formative that was. It certainly helped my Star Trek knowledge considerably. But I've always loved computers. Somewhere in college, I started watching some of the people who were like setting up, college pizza delivery services, and the core entrepreneurs, and thinking, this looks like a really fun thing to do.
I think it's the very rare idea that can be done by a single individual. Almost everything that is going to change the world, solve a problem, improve something. These are usually big efforts, and they require a team working together to really get something important done. And that has been the story of Amazon.com. At every step along the way, we've had a team here that is making this work. I mean, I don't know, even at the smallest scale, you have to figure out how to get help from your friends, from your family members, from people that you can hire in those early days. I think without that, it would never work.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we actually saw this, I think you see it all over the place in many different contexts, but I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where at the sort of peak of the sort of internet mania in, say, 1999, you found people who were very passionate about something. They kind of left that job and decided, I'm going to do something in the internet, because it was almost like the 1849 gold rush in a way. I mean, you find that people, if you go back and study the history of the 1849 gold rush, you find that at that time, everybody who was within shouting distance of California was, they might have been a doctor, but they quit being a doctor and they started panning for gold. And that almost never works. And even if it does work, according to some metric, financial success or whatever it might be, I suspect it leaves you ultimately unsatisfied. So you really need to be very clear with yourself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is this notion of projecting yourself forward to age 80, looking back on your life and trying to make sure you minimize the number of regrets you have. That works for career decisions, it works for family decisions. Do you want, I have a 14-month-old son, and it's very easy for me to, if I think about myself when I'm 80, I know I want to watch that little guy grow up.
Donc, si vous y
And so
réfléchissez,
I
je
don't want to
suppose
be
que je
80 and
recommanderais
think, shoot, you know,
aux gens
I missed
d'adopter
that
un
whole
point de vue
thing
à
and I
long
don't
terme.
have the kind of
Et
relationship
je
with
pense
my
que
son that I
c'est
wished I
quelque chose
had
sur
and so
lequel
on
il
and
y a
so on.
beaucoup de
So if you
controverses.
think about
Il
that,
y a quelque
so
chose
I
de
guess
beaucoup de
another
gens,
thing that
et
I
je n'en
would
fais pas
recommend to
partie.
people
Crois
is
que
that they
tu devrais
always take
vivre
a
pour le moment
long-term point of
présent.
view.
Je
And
pense
I
que ce
think
que
this
vous
is
faites,
something
vous
about which
pensez
there's
au
a
grand
lot
temps
of
qui
controversy. You know, there's
vous attend et essayez de vous assurer que
a
vous
lot of
planifiez
people,
cela
and I'm just not one of them,
d'une
believe that
manière
you
qui
should
vous
live for the
satisfera
now.
finalement.
I think what you
Ceci
do
est juste
is
mon
you
test et la
think
façon dont cela
about
fonctionne pour moi. Tout le monde a
the great
besoin de
expanse
trouver
of
sa
time
part
ahead of
lui-même.
you and try to make sure that you're planning for
Donc
that
je
in a way
pense
that's
qu'il
going to
y a
leave you
beaucoup de chemin
ultimately
vers la
satisfied.
satisfaction.
So this is
Et
just
vous devez en trouver un
this
qui
is the way it
fonctionne
works for
pour
me.
vous.
And I mean, everybody needs to
Merci beaucoup
find that
d'avoir
for
regardé.
themselves.
J'aimerais savoir ce que vous
So I think there are a lot
avez
of
pensé de cette
paths
vidéo.
to
Et en général, que
satisfaction.
penses-tu de notre série
And
volume
you
2?
need to find one that
Laissez-le dans le commentaire ci-dessous, je suis
works
super
for
curieux
you.
de savoir ce que vous avez à dire. J'aimerais aussi apprendre qu'avez-vous pris de cette
Thank you
vidéo.
guys so much for
Qu'avez-vous appris
watching.
de
I'd love to know, what did you think of this video? And in general, what do you think of our Volume 2 series? Leave it down in the comments below. I'm super curious to find out what you have to say. Also, I'd love to learn, what did you take from this video? What did you learn from Jeff today? Which clip resonated the most with you? And what are you going to immediately apply to your life or your business somehow? Please leave it down in the comments and I'm going to join in the discussion. Finally, I want to give a quick shout out to Carolyn Owens. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for picking up a copy of my book, Your One Word, and posting a picture of it on Twitter. I really appreciate the support and I hope you're enjoying the read. So thank you guys so much for watching. I believe in you. I hope you continue to believe in yourself and whatever your one word is.
En tant que
Much
personnage
love.
public et de développer une peau épaisse. C'est vraiment la seule défense
The
efficace
best defense
parce que vous ne pouvez pas l'arrêter.
to speech
Vous savez
that
que
you
vous
don't
allez être
like
mal
about
compris.
yourself
Si vous
as a
faites
public
quelque
figure
chose
is
d'intéressant
to
dans le
develop a
monde,
thick
vous
skin.
allez avoir des critiques. Si vous ne
It's
pouvez
really the only
absolument pas
effective
tolérer des
defense
critiques, alors
because you can't
ne
stop
faites rien
it.
de nouveau ou
You know, you are going to be
d'intéressant.
misunderstood.
Et puis, vous pouvez
If you're
vous
doing
isoler.
anything interesting in the world,
Alors pensez
you're
à
going to
votre
have
vie, les
critics.
merveilleux points.
The only way, if you absolutely can't tolerate critics, then don't do anything new or interesting.
Vous avez probablement des choses ont probablement
And
été décrites
then
sur
you
vous.
can insulate yourself. Then think how wonderful your life will
Is
be.
that the Bezos principle?
Yeah, usually people, if you see something, I don't know, you're kind of a public figure, and things have probably been written about you that you didn't think were nice.
That's true.
And my advice, if you came to me and said, Jeff, somebody wrote this and it really hurt my feelings, what should I do? I would say, go stand on a street corner
Si vous restez sur ce coin de rue et
and
vraiment
watch in a crowded
vous pouvez faire
urban
cette
area
expérience
and watch all the people
comme d'accord,
walk
il y a
by
une femme qui vient de passer.
and think about
À quoi
what they're
pense-t-elle
thinking
réellement?
about. I bet you none of those people are thinking about you. If you're standing on that street corner, and really, in your mind, you can do this thought experiment. Like, okay, there's a woman who just walked by. What's she actually thinking about? Probably maybe what she's going to cook for dinner that night, or that the argument that she had with one of her employees, or whatever it is. Like, it's not about us.
A lot of small book publishers and other smaller companies worry that the power of Amazon gives them no chance.
You got to earn your keep in this world. When you invent something new, if customers come to the party, it's disruptive to the old way.
Yeah, but I mean, there are areas where your power is so great and your margin, you're prepared to make it so thin that you can drive people out of business, and you have that kind of strength. And people worried, is Amazon ruthless in their pursuit of market share?
The internet is disrupting every media industry, Charlie. You know, people can complain about that, but complaining is not a strategy. Amazon is not happening to book selling. The future is happening to book selling.